Hello and welcome back. I don't know if I've said it before, but there is value in watching these in order, these postings, these videos. Not necessarily because I'm going in order as the events took place in my life, but there are usually there's things that I say in addition to that that I either reference previous things or or whatnot. I guess kind of like there's more than one story going on, and you might, okay, I guess, why am I bringing this up? Because better yet, let's pause. Why am I doing this? Okay, why have I decided now at basically age 50 to document by way of video and to post some of the trials that I've gone through, and I don't know if I've said this on video, but I've texted people that I've told about that I'm doing this, and the number one reason, okay, and maybe I back up, I'm doing fine, like I'm good, I'm not, everything's good, but the number one reason is I don't know how long I'll be around to do it. And I think that's a true statement for anybody really. You don't know when your last day is, no matter how what your circumstances. You don't know what your last day is. But I think it's safe to say, and I've said this for years, and I truly believe this, that I feel my lifespan will be shorter than, and I hate to use this term, normal. Okay. Oh gosh, he's being so morbid right now. He's talking about dying. Or is he going to try killing himself? Is he what? Okay. So, like, everybody has a kind of a hard time absorbing what I just said. Even thinking it's morbid, but let's say we had somebody who had a heart condition, and I mean, out of fairness, can we also say that they had, so they catch up to my suicide attempts? Can we say they had 20 episodes with their heart condition? And maybe also to equal it out with just the different pills and crap that I got to take, for this and just what it does to my body. Can we say they're obese maybe also, or eat unhealthy? Now, if we looked at that person, someone who would be obese, not eating healthy, 20-ish heart events, whether that, whatever that looks like, but definitely heart, real issues, you'd like, yeah, they're not going to make it, to a normal old age, if you will. They're going to die young, and you wouldn't think twice of that. I mean, in fact, you probably think that sometimes. You're like, oh, you look at someone, oh, they're not very healthy. Yeah, they're not going to live forever. So is it wrong to bring that over and apply it to mental health? I don't I don't think it is. I think it's I don't think it's, like coming from a depressed state. Um, I would say it comes from a real honest, a real honest um, reflection. And the times when I'm feeling really good, do I like the idea that I more than likely won't live a full life? No, no, I don't. I don't like that at all. In fact, it quite honestly, it pisses me off that I the chances are I'm not going to live what most people would live, to age. And you're like, well, wait a second, I'm so confused. You you've tried suicide at all these different times. There's a lot of your life that you're depressed and you want to die, and yet you're telling me you also are angry, knowing that you might not make it to a ripe old age. Yeah, yeah. And let me tell you why. And I've already shared it. I just haven't shared it for you to think about this way. Like I said, the whole profession for mental health is really, 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 really good at quantity of life. Okay, so that's the back end at making you have more days. But like I've said, and I believe 100%, they suck at quality of life. Okay, what are you getting to? I don't get it. What are you trying to say? You've already told us this, right? Here, I guess just, okay, let's just step in my shoes for a minute, okay? And let's think, like I shared in the other one, I've done this cycle. I mean, I didn't count, but I would say at least 40 times, at least 40 lows and 40 highs. And in the beginning, the normal, if you call it, the zone in between those two ends was much wider. And I got to reside in that zone also. So that was 3 zones. So if I'm residing in that middle zone, and I want, I'm good. I'm truly enjoying life. Don't you think that anytime during that stage that I don't realize and reflect on the fact that I don't have a full amount to work with? Of course I do. And while I'm in that same state, I realize that the amount of time between whatever this end is and my current state is, I'm not always good. Okay, so I'm 50 now. I have a, I don't know. Yeah, if I made it to 70, okay, if I made it to, I can't even keep a straight face with that. If I made it to 70, that's 20 years, right? That's 70 minus 50 is 20 years. Okay, but it's not. Okay, it's not, because I vary, especially as of the last quite a few cycles, I don't reside in the middle at all anymore. This is the way I've been describing it in counseling. It went from this vast field, where you just couldn't see the end. There was no boundary lines between property owners. There was no you couldn't even tell where the end of the field was. Almost like a rainbow, trying to get the pot at the end of the rainbow. You never get there. That was that's how I would describe my middles. I mean, they were nice. You could regroup and you could get a little goody, a little goody out of this world. But that's not how I describe it anymore. As of lately, and I say this from experience because we went to Chicago one time, and thank goodness my buddy backed the truck up and down this little bitty alley in Chicago, and we had a car trailer, on the back of this thing. I still couldn't draw it out on paper and make that work, but somehow he got her backed up off of a one-way street, up this one-way alley, and backed up there. Why are you telling us this? Okay, well, I'm telling you this because that alley was narrow. Okay, it was narrow, and there wasn't much room on either side of that car trailer, and they're a little wider than a car, obviously, because you got to build a car on there. But there might have been 2 foot on one side, and then 2 foot on the other side, and then dumpsters, and then obviously the other wall or whatever, and that's what I've been using to describe my normal state. And I should come up with a different word. There's probably even some cool medical term, neutral. I don't know. there's probably some term. Why have I not learned it yet? But my middle, my neutral, is like this. It's just like any of them people in Chicago taking out their garbage and walking across that alley and throwing their bag of garbage in the dumpster. It's 3 steps. Maybe 4 if you got little legs. And then you're there. It's done. You can see the other side. And it sucks. I'll tell you that. It absolutely sucks. And when I talk about my condition and my my story of my events and stuff like that, those they're mine, okay, and I can tell you from being in the mental hospital, which just so my audience knows, I call it the clink. I don't even know how you spell it. CLINK, the clink. And it's kind of like jail, So whenever I go in, good buddies and whatnot, hey, I'm back in the clink, So I've spent a lot of my life. I feel pretty confident, I feel pretty confident that I've spent over a year of my life between 17 and 49 that I am now, over a year of my life in the clink. I had 2 stays last year alone, 2 stays. And so I've got a lot of exposure to other people in the clink. I was going to say like me, but that's exactly what I'm trying to make a point of. Is they're not all like me. In fact, there's quite a variety, a fluctuation between people that are in there. And so when I share this stuff, it's my version of what I'm going through. And I'm not saying there's not similarities. Oh, I'm sure there is. But you might have to step back and not be, this close when you're looking at putting us into a group. you know, because there's differences. But I can tell you pretty confidently, most I'll just leave it at most all have experienced trauma, and most of the time it's pretty substantial. Most of the time it's from a young age. You know, and on that note, on the trauma bit, you know, because like I said, I've spent a lot of time in there, and I've sat around a lot of, you know, get better type tables where we're learning strategies to fix us and whatnot. There are some stories, I guess, you know, like life sharing stories that I listen to, and I'm like, man, I got it good. I've been blessed. Like I'm struggling, but I don't think I can handle that. I don't think I can handle that. But then there's others that you know, they're sharing their story, and they're, you know, they're just as worked up or whatever, and they're broken, you know, just like everyone else at the table. And they share their story, and you listen to it, you're like, when are you going to start telling your story? Because you're, you know, I'm listening, and I'm like, well, you know, so your pet canary died. Okay, well that's sucks to be you. That's a tough one, you know. And I'm making light of that. But here's what I know from experience: that doesn't matter. That does not matter. It does not matter that the person has trials that they've gone through, and heartache that they've gone through, whatever. And man, there's stuff you don't want to know about. Okay. And then you got over here, this person is like, you're not depressed. You should barely be sad. But it doesn't work that way. It's like we all don't necessarily have the same tolerance, you know what I mean, threshold to our exposures. Just as well as not every exposure, you know, whatever the event is going to be received equally by two different people. And so I think we have to keep in mind I want to say severity of the circumstances leading up to it do not necessarily reduce or disqualify, you know, like discount what they're going through and how they're processed. So, you know, I don't even know if I feel, I won't say safe. I don't feel right even saying this, but I'm going to say it. Just because a person sucks at their ability to process I don't know if the word's traumatic event, doesn't make it any less impactful for them. Does that make sense? Like they're hurting. They're in the same bad way. And so in that regard, we are the same. When I'm sharing this stuff and I'm talking, then yes, we are the same. But you have to realize that not everyone is going to experience the same degree of trauma. I think trauma is maybe the word I want to use. So this is just my version. So one is, okay, I'm sharing this because I don't know how much time I have left. When I explain that you chop out the highs, I'm useless for the most part. Definitely the lows, I'm useless. So I've got a middle, but the middle is now just a Chicago alley. It's this like little thing. So really my zones, my operating zones now is entering into a high, coming out of a high, I guess the alley. Sometimes I don't even know I crossed it. I must have been sleepwalking. And then just entering into depression. Now you noticed I didn't say like when I'm coming out of a depression towards that alley. You notice I didn't mention that. And the reason I don't mention that as the depression lifts and it lightens up. Well, why couldn't you make use of that time? Man, I'll tell you why. Because you just fought a war. You just did the hardest thing that you'll ever do. The hardest. And so when you're coming out, sometimes you don't even know you're coming out because you're too like exhausted to see that it's lessening. Other times you don't want to poke the bear. You know what I mean by that? Poke the bear. You don't want to. You don't want to test fate. You don't want to go the other way. You don't want to go back to depression. So you're just like, oh, maybe if I just keep really still, it'll go away. And that truly actually exists as you pass through the alley for the most part. And it takes a little bit coming up on the ramp to the high before you feel secure enough to tempt fate. To dip your toe in the water. Is this for real? Is this just a good day? What is it? Yeah, this is real. And some of it's already chewed up by the time that happens. So anyway, that was really long-winded, but I hope you understand the first reason for wanting to record these. You can call it morbid if you want. I call it just reality. I want to be able to get it out there. Okay, so what's another reason? Another reason, we all well, I'm not supposed to use all. Many people have some memory loss as they get older. And, I'm not excluded. In fact, for this very next reason is another reason I'm doing it. The meds and the cycles they're a little hard on the brain. They're a little hard on the memory. And so it's not going to be there. Somebody that back end 70 or I should pick a number I don't have to laugh about. 70. If I get to 70, I'll be chuckling. Maybe. Depends on how I'm feeling. Anyway, if I get to 70. So, oh gosh, what was I going to say? Well, anyway, that means my memory probably is not going to go out to my end, my 70. It may start happening sooner, memory loss. But the other reason, and this is no joke, zero joke, is one of the most effective treatments for me are ECTs. Okay. And ECTs stand for well, I'll just call it what it is. It's electricity, and they shock you, and they call it a therapy. But its acronym is EC, electroconvulsive. That's right, because the whole goal is to have a seizure. We'll talk about this. Don't be like, oh, I want to know more. Just hold on. So when they shock your brain, you're probably like, they do that? They still do that? Yeah. Yes, they do. They've been doing that crap for I don't know, probably maybe 100 years now, or some version of it. But anyway, that's what works for me, is the ECTs. When all else fails, that's what I had done last year. I was there for 3 weeks, and they typically do. I always call it getting nuked, like putting you in the microwave. But they nuke you 3 times a week, and then they'll do a bout of those. Okay, so basically you get zapped on Monday, and then they give you Tuesday for your brain to try to figure out what the hell just happened, and then you get them on Wednesday, and then the brain got to do what it's got to do, and then Thursday is a rest day. Thursday you're going to figure it out or whatever, and then Friday, bam, zap you again. So you get a little more healing on the weekend. You get it's like a party. You get 2 days, and that's the procedure. Is this shock therapy, and they will warn. Okay, in fact, you got to sign stuff. Like, it's no joke. You go into the hospital, like the mental hospital, and if they do ECTs, which very few of them do anymore, you sign paperwork to go in and all this and that. But once they decide that you guys decide whatever, that your plan of action is ECTs, you sign more paperwork. It doesn't matter if you've done it before. They're like, sign your life away here. This is going to make you stupid. In fact, in the old days, I kid you not, they would. It's so funny. How do I remember this? I got zapped, but they would make me watch the same stupid, 1980s, maybe 90s video of all the side effects, and about 2 minutes of history on it, like, oh, it was something developed in this year, and the whole rest of it's like. But in fact, if you're married, they make your wife watch it too. That way when they hand you back to her, she knows what she signed off on. But they talk about memory loss, and they do describe the memory loss, and they talk about it kind of being short term, and they actually talk in the video or whatever. There's 2 different procedures that they do for ECTs. Okay, and I get the real one. Not that the other one's not real, but they put me in for the full minute. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Okay, well here's what it means. The, the two kinds are unilateral, and the other is bilateral. So una, one, and is bi, is two. So okay, well what does that mean? So when they do unilateral, they only shock one hemisphere. I think it's hemisphere. Is that how they pronounce one half of the brain? And what I don't know is if they always do the right, or they mix it up. Like on Mondays they do the right, and Wednesdays they do the left. I don't know, but they let's just say they're doing this side, this hemisphere. Then the juice goes in here, okay, and then it comes out in the back. So basically they're kind of sticking it lengthways through your brain, and that's unilateral. While with unilateral, this side's over here like, hey, what's going on over there? I see you got company. It's just hanging out. And anyway, because it's only one side, there's less memory loss, less damage, if you will, because it's only 50% of your brain. Mine, we just started out probably because of the seriousness of my condition. We just started straight into bilateral, and we've always done bilateral. And so bilateral is a little different. So instead of the other electrode being at the back of the brain, instead they electrode here and they electrode here, and so they're passing the juice through this side and this side. So that way one side of your brain isn't jealous that it didn't get to go to the party. They both get to go. So, but they downplay the memory loss. Okay, it's pretty dramatic, and I wouldn't say it's always the same. Okay, like I've had different I don't know what you call them, therapies, whatever, the clusters of these ECTs. When you do a group of them and then you're done. Anyway, I've had some that I've done, and kind of smoked the old mind a little bit. And then I've had other times where, don't get me wrong, it still did a number, but it was different. Okay. And so you can see, and I don't think it ever completely fixes itself, I guess is what I'm getting to. Plus it does a weird thing, So I do believe that there's stuff that's, I guess I'm going to say from my experience, I don't want to say lost, because my experience from doing this for however many years now is they're not lost. Okay. And I'm, I don't know what they call brain people, but I'm not a brain person, but I can tell you how it works, because I've lived it. So, what happens is they're not lost, but there's no connection. There's no connection to that memory anymore. I want you to think, in your own mind, as even right now, as if you recall, it really doesn't matter, just recall anything. What you have is you have this, you're here, and you have these connections to these memories. In fact, now you have these connections, you can think about it and kind of search them out. Okay, which which path was it to that memory? Ah, boom, and then you enter in it, and then when you get to that memory, um, there's paths from that memory to other memories. Okay, and so a lot of times that's you'll start talking about something here in this memory, and it'll click. Oh yeah, that I remember that happened too. Remember that guy? I forgot him. It'll be be made. The the problem that happens with the ECTs is there's some road construction. There ain't even detours. This road's closed. You don't even get a sign that it's closed. It just doesn't exist. They just removed it off of the map. You can't even search the memory or the road, if you will, because you don't even remember to know to search for it, like because it doesn't exist. It's gone, and it's a real trippy a trippy thing to live through, and I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine trying to heal from ECTs without having loving, loving people around you. And I say that kind of from experience because I can never pronounce it, but that Alzheimer's, where they're losing their mind. I can't say that I know anything about what that feels like, but what I do know what it feels like is when you are given back a memory, because remember I said it was still in your head, so you kind of need some type of time or events or people to help draw the roads, draw them back to the memory. And if you're not in a good place, then when I guess what I'm trying to say is if somebody gives you a memory, even if it was already in your head, but maybe it wasn't, if it's not coming from a good person, a good place, there is no faster track to feeling like you've absolutely lost your freaking mind when that's not right. You will question. Sanity is gone. It's a tough one. But I'm in a really good place right now, and my wife is very very good, and there's a huge level of trust, and it's not just trust. It's the way it's done too. I don't know what that looks like. I can just tell you the way it feels, But when someone's knitting back together your story, that's kind of godlike. That's some power, and my wife does a wonderful job at wielding that. at helping me discover my history. I guess, is that the word? My history, my past, in such a way that it's received and processed well. But not all memories have had roads connected back. They're gone. Well, why would that be? Well, if I can't draw the road, okay, if I can't find a scenario, whether from the center hub to the memory, if I have no reason, I don't want to say no reason, but I don't know how to draw that. Where would I go? Just do. I don't have a target. Okay, so it's gonna, hang out there. Now, do I ever get memories back on my own? Yes, I do, and I'll tell you how. The memories that I get back on my own are just like this. Okay, we have kind of center where it's kind of like where you can see everything. Where you're like a starting point. And remember that memory over here. And I just told you I don't even know where to make the road. And that's true. I don't. That will, if my wife or friends and family don't kindly draw that road, they don't know what road to draw. It just happens kind of almost by accident. Okay, but if they don't draw that road, that will hang out there, lost, and it's gone, but it's there. Now, how do I get it back? By accident, by complete accident. But I can get it back. I can't pick a specific memory and search it out and get it back. It doesn't work like that. But just pretend this guy's going to stay here. So here's the starting where I feel we all start, and let's I remember that this whatever event, and I recall it. It for some reason it's intact or whatever, or maybe that one got connected. Who knows? But then let's say this memory over here's got Tom and whatever, some flowers. Okay, well then all of a sudden it can happen that I remember, well, Tom had a floral shop, and that was the memory that was that was lost. And let's say my wife never met Tom. Maybe Tom's someone from way back in, well, he wouldn't be kindergarten because he's got a flower shop, unless he had some ones he drew. But could you see how if there's no one around me in my life that would relate something to that memory of Tom's flower shop, then it isn't coming back. So it either has to be something that gets picked up by just me and my environment that starts tagging these details together. It has to be something that's been given to me, like my wife or somebody in the family has made this connection, and then that makes that connection. And I say this to tell you this is another reason that I'm doing these videos. Is kind of like I don't want you to think sanity check, but it's almost a sanity check, and it's a little helpful, because as I talk out one story, then I may get something back. You got to remember, like, for example, my wife, it's not her fault, but my wife wasn't there in my high school time period. She wasn't there when I was a kid. How would she be able to help me? Not that he even needs help, but how's that going to trigger it? It won't. And so what I've found already is I've really enjoyed is sharing of these stories, I know some of them are a little hard to hear, but as I share this detail or that detail, I for one get it down on video. Okay, so it's, I guess, there. But it also helps me make some roads, some pathways. And they'll get screwed up again because, I'll get nuked again. Hopefully not this year. We'll see. we'll skip a year. So I'm looking at the time on this video, and why don't I finish out by sharing more about the ECTs? That seems to be a real favorite because I don't know. Through the years, people are like, what? They don't know they exist, or thought that was like a joke, or like, I don't know, not real. So let's just start out on Monday. Okay, let's start out on Monday, and typically they do it first thing in the morning. They come wake you. It's pretty early. I don't know why it's always been that way, but it's not like they do it in the afternoon. Actually, they probably have to do it in the morning. Never mind, because you can't have food in your stomach, and what easier way to do that than grab you first thing in the morning before you eat. Another requirement is, and you'd be surprised, there's a lot of what do you want to call it, anti-seizure medicine that is used. And when I say a lot, there's a few. I don't know. I haven't been on all of them, but I have been on them. And you can't have a fresh dose of that in you when you're going to have an ECT. So a lot of times they'll skip that. They'll skip that dose the night before on your night meds. You just won't do that dose. And so, yeah, it's Monday. They pretty much wake you up. They put you in a wheelchair, and you get wheeled off to a different area of the hospital. You're not in they take you outside of the clink and bring you into the regular hospital. And I don't know what I would call the room they bring you in, but it's not a normal room. Okay, the room that the procedure is. I don't know what you call it. I want to say operating room. I mean, it's got all the crap to do everything, and but my wife would know. She's in the medical field, but whatever that procedure room, it's basically like an operating room. Well, you're just a number. Okay, so when they get you out of the wheelchair, they bring you to a bed, and you climb up in the bed, and then a nurse comes in, and she starts an IV and all that in you. And the idea is that they can make that operating room or that portion of this process just more streamlined. You're not wasting time doing any of that. But yeah, they get the IV, whatever you call that, started and get you prepped out from there. And I think I can't remember. See, this is my connection missing. I can't remember if you get into a gown. Part of me, like a large part of me, wants to say yes, but part of me wants to say no. If you do it at that stage. I don't remember like going to a bathroom or maybe they don't. But she at this stage, when they do it this way, and they all do it just a little bit different, but it's still kind of like this. So the IV, and then the other thing is they pick. You don't pick, but they probably do the same. This last place did my left foot, So you don't have shoes on when you're in the clinic. You get these little hospital socks with the little grippy things on. That's kind of like your life, for if that won't make you depressed. Wear slippers and the the hospital gowns, Yeah, it's ridiculous. Wear that for 3 weeks. See how you. Oh, I'm feeling much happier. But so she takes your little slipper off, and I guess in this case rolls your pant up. And maybe that's the way. Maybe in the old days they do, because I want to say there was a gown too. But anyway, they pull it up, and she puts a blood pressure cuff on your ankle. Okay. And then pretty much she jumps to the next bed, or whoever the wheelchair driving person brings in next, and gets that person ready, and you just wait your turn. You're kind of just all lined up. And they, I will give this, for something that's, I've had it done, I want to say, I don't even know, I want to say 50 or 100 times, treatments. It's still kind of scary, it's not I don't know, it's scary. And I've always felt, no matter where I've gone, that they've done a really good job at just, I guess, kind of making you feel special, like they're just there for you that day, and calming. They got some pretty good. They've had some pretty good, staff in there. So they do. One of the gals that's from that room, the operating room, she comes out and she grabs your whole bed, and she wheels it out, and wheels it into the operating room, as I'll call it. It's got to be an operating room. I don't know. And the first thing you're going to notice is, you go from kind of a dimmed, they got the lights dimmed in this other stage, where you first come in, and it's just I don't know, it's just a little more subtle, a little more relaxed. And there's really only one person working, usually the one that's putting on the, IV and whatnot. And all of a sudden the doors go open to this operating room, and it's full of lights. Like, it's bright in there. It's bright. The temperature is different. You go from warm and fuzzy. They put a nice warm blanket on you when you're at the first stage, but you go in that room, and it's immediately cold. It's bright, and there's people. There's people, and you want to know how many people? I don't know. There's usually I would say the psychologist. Your psychologist, and he's usually running the juicer machine, the one that nukes you. And there's at least 2 or 3 nurse type people, that are in there and setting things up and doing their procedure that I'm sure they do over and over and over all day long. And then you have an anesthesiologist there also, and he's there, and those guys are always kind of cool cats. They're like weird as can be. They got some weird humor, but I guess if you're pretty much killing people every day and bringing them back to life, you'd be weird too. But yeah, there's 4 or 5 people. This is a procedure, and the psych doctor is always. I'm thinking, yeah, every time he's always been up in my. No matter what hospital I've done this, he's always up at my right hand side with his little stereo system or whatever that he does the nuke in. Prints out the little receipts. He gets the receipts that come out of it. You've got the one nurse that's coming around here, and she's getting you geared up. So I got to think about what all that entails. She, for me, she's doing the boom and the boom, and then there's like this really kind of thick rubber band that's like that tall. It's got holes in it, and it's kind of neat because they stretch it around your head, and then these little metal, I don't know what you want to call them, these little metal flat round disc, they have a bump on the back, and so they just stretch that around, and then they line up the holes and stick them over the little stud on the back of those metal things, and it holds everything. So now you've got a rubber band, and then when you get to here, you've got the metal disc underneath the rubber pad or rubber band, and then continuing back around is to makes a full circle. And then the same gal, she like does the most work, really. When I think about it, she does the most work. She then snaps on the electrodes. Okay, so outside of that rubber where the stud's still coming out even further, she clip, and for the unilateral it'd be clip, and then back here clip. And then she's got one last task to do, but let's pause on her task, because what I didn't tell you is, meanwhile, the quirky, completely weird anesthesiologist is just always trying to make light talk or whatever you want to call it, and he I don't know, he's just trying to probably soften it all up a little bit, and he's down there playing with the blood pressure cuff. He's hooking up your IV to his drugs, and he's starting his process. Okay, so what is he starting? I believe he's just getting kind of the liquid through, so it's ready or whatever. And then the gal up at my left shoulder is kind of ready. She's not really hiding it, okay, but she's she has my piece that'll go in my mouth ready, okay. So then, but before she does that, she puts a oxygen mask over my mouth, and usually, if anyone's had anesthesiologists, they'll be like, oh, count backwards, you're just whatever, and they got some little, each of them do a little different. But what they do, you're sitting there, and then you feel your blood pressure cuff on your leg pump up like tight on your on your ankle, pumps up tight, and then I guess I don't know what really puts you out. I'm kind of drawing a blank to that, because you do have this. I know one of the things for sure. This sounds weird. So they pumped up your ankle. One of the things they pump into your your IV is like a muscle relaxer. Okay. Not an anti-seizure, but more of a kind of a muscle relaxer. And so maybe the put you out stuff's in here. So you're breathing. Next thing, you start getting pretty tired, and you go out, and you wake up later. But to give you an idea of what's going on in the room while you're out, or so you guys know, is the mask ends up coming off, okay, and in its place, and I don't know if there's something that hooks to it, but there's a bite that goes in your mouth that you can breathe through. So I don't know if I'm still breathing, because there's a hole through it, and the funny thing is, they've been using these for like 50 or 100 years. This exact same style, but they put this in there, and I assume I clench down. Maybe she holds my chin up. I don't know how it works exactly. But it's like a bite guard that you can breathe through. And around that time, you're all ready, and the psychologist or whatever, he throws the switch. He gives you the juice, and so now there's juice flowing across, in my case, both sides of my brain. And well, you're probably like, well, why did they blood pressure cuff your foot? Okay, I'll tell you why. That's a It's a good question. I always wondered that. They blood pressure my foot is because they squeeze it hard enough that no blood is going in my foot. So like this, you don't want this to be like an hour-long procedure, but there's no blood flow going into my foot. Well, why would they do that? They're doing that because that medicine that they gave me through my IV is there to relax my body, because the whole goal of them putting juice through your brain is to make you have a seizure. Okay, so that's the goal, is a seizure. A seizure is the goal. It's not just to nuke your brain. The nuking your brain is to induce a seizure. Okay. Well, since you don't, so they want that medicine in you because you can hurt yourself in a seizure, like break ribs and everything else while you're convulsing or whatever. And then that's why you have the mouth guard in. That's why the gal's got the mouth guard holding that and whatnot. But the foot doesn't have that relaxing medicine in it, because they're watching, well, not they, the psychiatrist is watching your foot to see how good of a seizure you're having. Okay. He also has little charts, like this little display on his machine, and it actually even spits out like this little tape reel, this like an adding machine, and it shows the how good a seizure you had. But that's their visual indicator of your seizure to go along with the deal. And basically they'll keep nuking, keep doing little mini sessions, if you will, to hit the threshold, the quality of seizure that they're looking for, the intensity, but also they need they're looking for a certain duration, both. And once they get that, or enough of whatever those, then that's their goal. And they kind of keep track of you as their patient. And so my number might be different than somebody else's number, like where our threshold or what they're trying to hit or maintain based on how we're doing, like with treatment. And somewhere in there, when they're done making you have seizures, they take the blood pressure cuff off, the IVs, out when I wake up, and they wheel me back into the exact same spot, that warm spot that I started. And then you get to, wake up like you would from any anesthesia or whatever, which is always a trippy feeling in itself. But I promise you, it's just a little more trippy when they just nuked your brain. So one last thing I'll add that they used to do for me that they stopped doing, and they stopped doing this. Most people were, like my circle of friends knows about this, but most people don't realize. I don't even know how many years ago, 10-ish years ago, there was a caffeine shortage. Now, you wouldn't know that from, drinking Folgers and Mountain Dew. We're not talking that kind of shortage. We're talking about pharmaceutical grade caffeine, okay? There was a shortage, and they've never done this procedure since. But I'll tell you what was standard and what they used to do, okay? And they told me that first time the reason they weren't like using it on me, people like me anymore, is because they were saving it. It sounded like for the prenatal babies. I guess they must kind of keep them hopped up, and when they're trying to keep them alive or whatever, So there was a huge shortage, and that's where all of it was going. But what they would do is, the only difference is when they would inject that body relaxing stuff I told you about, they would then, and this, I'll tell you, it's the trippiest thing I ever It was trippy. They would shoot that caffeine in, into your vein, and you'd be laying there, on your back, your rubber band and whatnot on, things clipped on, and your face mask on, and the anesthesiologist is making jokes, and that caffeine would hit your I don't know, brain, body, I don't know what it hits. But when it did, you went from a level 2 to like 100. You were invincible. Like I mean, you felt like the Incredible Hulk. I've never experienced anything like it. And that would, I mean, you would just about come up off that table, like just would go get them. And then about that fast you'd fall asleep. It was so trippy. It was so trippy. Oh man, to go, you're like, you're there, and all of a sudden you're just gonna kick some butt, like anyone and everybody's, all for about 3 seconds, and then, and nowhere else have I ever experienced anything like that. It was, wow, it was, yeah. But anyway, so that's today's story on mental health as I share, and I hope you found it educational and of worthwhile. I'm gonna keep doing them. They're all not going to be as light-hearted as this, just because I think if you've seen the other ones, sometimes I have some hard times not welling up in tears, and I feel I'm pretty much processed and through those events, but they're real, and we will definitely get back to those. So thank you for tuning in, and quite honestly, thank you for making it to the end. Congratulations. So thank you.